Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
A heated debate is sparked in the House of Assembly after two members of the opposition seek a judicial review into that constituency's commission report. That story coming up.
One letter from an MP causing quite the stir in Parliament. The story coming up.
Defense Force officers to join crime-fighting efforts, and more than 1,700 homeowners eligible for mortgage relief. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina McNeil. Topping news tonight, a legal challenge over the recently tabled draft boundaries report sparked a firestorm in the House of Assembly this morning after House Speaker Dr. Kendall Major ruled that the legal action would not stop debate on the constituency's commission report. Well, that did not sit well with the two opposition MPs who filed the legal action, with the Speaker threatening to boot a disruptive Fort Charlotte MP, Dr. Andre Rollins, from the House. Jasmine Brown has all the drama in this report.
The argument grew so heated at certain times that both the Speaker and Dr. Rollins began shouting as officers waited just outside the House of Assembly doors. Before the fireworks, Major read this letter he received from Dr. Rollins into the record of the House. Rollins advised Major that it was his intention to raise a matter of national importance pertaining to legal action initiated by himself and Montague MP Richard Lightburn. The opposition MPs are seeking the leave of the court for judicial review of the constitutionality and legality of the Constituency Commission's boundaries report. However, Major made it clear the debate would not be halted.
You are within your rights to use the courts as you so well desire. However, at this time, and this is addressing the member for Kalani also, to have two bites of the same issue is improper and violates legal precedent. The fact that you have gone to court and now to expect to come in this place and speak to this issue with an intent to prevent debate will not succeed.
The ruling did not sit well with Rollins, who made several attempts to disrupt the debate, and Deputy Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis. Major immediately shot down his attempts.
The debate is starting. Take your seat. Member, take your seat.
Mr. Speaker.
Member, take your seat. Member, take your seat.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there could be no proper point of order to be engaged by this member, because the only thing that has occurred is your ruling. And there's no, you cannot have a point of order on your ruling.
But Rollins persisted, prompting this threat from Major as police officers gathered just outside the lower chamber.
Member for Fort Charlotte, there's a ruling on the floor by the chair. There's a ruling by the chair. You are out of order. You are out of order. You will have, member, I'll say this, take your seat. This is going to, we're not belaboring this. You're going to find yourself named from this house. Listen. I am telling you, I'm warning you. Take your seat. Take your seat. Willfully obstructing this house. The House has made a ruling. I have made a ruling. Member, take your seat. Member, take your seat.
Lightburn also stood on a point of order, questioning the Speaker's ruling.
Member for Montague, no point of order.
There's nothing
given a ruling, Mr. Speaker. I would like to know on what basis you've given a ruling on. You've not had the opportunity to understand what it is that is being raised in these court proceedings. The issues which are raised in the court proceedings, they are very serious matters. And for this proceeding to continue to debate this report, when there is a clear possibility that at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, you will find that a court may well overturn what has been determined in this court. And I think perhaps, Mr. Speaker, members are not aware that injunctions can be granted against a government to proceed in this matter.
All right, very well. Member, take your seat, member. Take your seat.
Now, Major was adamant that the debate get underway. He told the MPs that they were allowed to express their issues during that time. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Well, St. Anne's MP Hubert Chipman, in a letter today, accused government of cutting constituency boundaries in its favor and making changes to the boundaries report after he had signed it. That caused another uproar in Parliament this morning. Kyle Joaquin tells us more.
This letter from St. Anne's MP Hubert Chipman caused quite the stir in Parliament this morning as Marathon MP Jerome Fitzgerald sought to defend the government and Fort Charlotte MP Dr. Andrew Rollins sought to defend Chipman. The controversial report was in Parliament last Wednesday, bearing the signature of each member of the constituency's commission. However, in his letter to the House Speaker, Chipman said the document he signed wasn't the one tabled.
In particular, as mentioned during our telephone conversation of Friday, the 10th of February 2017, I had no prior knowledge of the changes relating to Montague as announced by the Right Honorable Prime Minister when the draft report was tabled in the House of Assembly on the 8th of February 2017.
That chunk of Montague, now Freetown, moved to another constituency is Blair Estate, an F&M dominated area. Chipman said he was bound to express his profound disappointment that the document produced to him withheld material contained in the actual draft report tabled in Parliament. Under the Constitution, the Prime Minister can make adjustments to the draft report presented by the Commission. However, the St. Anne's MP insisted in his letter there can be no justification for an increase in the number of seats, particularly where voter registration has been alarmingly abysmal in 2016 and in 2017. This is yet another attempt by the government to stack the election odds in its favor. Well, Marathon MP Jerome Fitzgerald quickly rose to his feet, crying shame on Chipman.
And I am not only surprised, Mr. Speaker, I am outraged as a member of that committee that all of us, 5 of us, including the judge, a Supreme Court judge, Mr. Speaker, would sign a document where we unanimously agreed, Mr. Speaker, to the boundaries.
But his argument didn't go unnoticed. Fort Charlotte MP Dr. Andrew Rollins immediately defended Chipman, who was out of town attending a CARICOM meeting with the Foreign Affairs Minister.
It is highly improper for the member for Marathon to be making the kind of defamatory statements about the member for St. Anne's. He has indicated in the letter addressed to you that there was a variance between what he signed and what was tabled.
Those who could speak from fact, they would speak of fact. But this is not about conjecture, this is not about he say, and nobody cannot defend a member who is not here, who wrote a letter that I read. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
And just when it seemed like the argument was over, Rollins once again defended Chipman against Deputy Prime Minister Philip Davis, who questioned Chipman's absence.
This is a serious allegation. I wish he was here. Yeah. Right? And I'm surprised that he was here. Right? Because recognizing, first of all, Mr. Speaker, he knew that today was the day for the debate. He knew that. He knew that. He knew that. Right, Mr. Speaker?
This was not a voluntary trip that he asked to travel to attend. He was invited by the government.
It's a point of information.
That needs to be recorded.
It's a point of information. It's no point of order. Sit, take your seat. Take your seat. Take your seat.
Debate continues on the boundaries report. For our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
And Prime Minister Perry Christie also took grave exception to Chipman's letter, insisting that the Constitution gives him the authority to make changes. He says the one change made was renaming the Montague constituency Freetown, something he foreshadowed when the report was tabled last week.
The Prime Minister, in his judgment, being influenced by ancestral considerations, has made one change by way of recommendation. And the change was with respect to the Montague constituency. The report that the member for St. Anne's signed was accepted as is, and in my communication to this House, which is a communication that you have access to, it stipulates that in accordance with the Constitution of the Bahamas, the Prime Minister, acting in accordance with that provision in the Constitution, has made the change of the name And that is the only change that the member could possibly be referring to.
Meanwhile, National Security Minister Dr. Bernard Nottage breaking his silence on the recent rise in violent crime days after the murder count climbed dramatically. Nottage says based on police intelligence, it's clear gangs are to blame for that unprecedented spike.
They have to be stopped. And one thing we know is when we have them in the prison, the incidence of shootings and the violence crime does go down.
The National Security Minister explained that many of the crime-fighting initiatives that he announced in the House of Assembly target organized crime. They include increasing foot patrols and stationing mobile patrol units in inner cities, community lockdowns, expanding urban renewal and CCTV, as well as establishing a gang unit within the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Despite the gravity of the situation, Nottage and FNM leader Dr. Hubert Minnis found humor in the topic, with Dr. Minnis claiming he was being spied on and followed.
There's no time to be funny. We do not have anybody following the leader of the Free National Movement around. Two people. Any two people that we have, they are fighting crime. So if they're following you around, they are following you around in pursuit of fighting crime.
The National Security Minister also admits there is no quick fix and insisted the government is doing all it can to clamp down on crime.
So some of these police actions will likely inconvenience members of the public, but they are necessary in the fight to curb the recent spate of criminal activity. And so I want to ask my fellow Bahamians for their patience, for their cooperation, and for their support as we do what is necessary to make our nation safer for all.
Well, Free National Movement leader Dr. Hubert Minnis says the Prime Minister's description of the Bahamas crime situation as the wild, wild west shows an appalling lack of leadership and accused the Prime Minister of being dismissive of crime. He says what makes it worse is that Christie and the Commissioner of Police can't seem to see eye to eye on the severity of the country's crime problem.
The Prime Minister's talking about the wild, wild west, and he looked frightened as hell when you look at him. Commissioner of Police, on the other hand, feel it's a mild episode that we're experiencing, so they are totally disconnect. When you have the Prime Minister and the Commissioner of Police are not speaking the same language with respect to crime, the question is, do they realize that there is a crime issue, and how do they deal with it?
The FNM leader says the crime issue is much bigger than the government is making it out to be and called for the government to take immediate action. Minnis went as far as to encourage the government to adopt the FNM's crime-fighting plan despite being months away from a general election. In other news, more than 1,700 borrowers have been deemed eligible for government's revamped mortgage relief program, according to State Minister for Finance Michael Halkitis, who says 29% of those homeowners have been enrolled in the program thus far. Though the Christie administration's first attempt at mortgage relief failed, helping only a dozen homeowners, Halkitis says the latest statistics are very encouraging.
In January 2017, 1,744 borrowers were deemed eligible for the program, and 1,400 of those borrowers have been contacted, and of that 1,400, 408 borrowers have completed all of the requirements for enrollment in the program. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance has commenced its financial counseling services for those individuals who have received or are receiving assistance through this program.
A revamped version of the mortgage relief plan was launched last year and will cost government $20 million over a 4-year period. The plan is expected to assist more than 1,000 homeowners who were 90 days or more past due as of May 2016. An amended homeowners protection bill was tabled in the House of Assembly today and has been branded as a comprehensive response to the country's mortgage crisis.
Mr. Speaker, the homeowners protection bill, when enacted, will be a major step forward in the rights of mortgagors in the Bahamas, bringing them in line with rights that mortgagors have in countries in this hemisphere. The government, however, does not view this as a panacea to the mortgage crisis. In this respect, the government is continuing to pursue its efforts with respect to borrowers' protection, stimulating economic activity and job creation.
Still to come on our news, the latest on that long-awaited payout for customs and immigration officers. Plus, Rotarians take a stand against crime. That's coming up when our news returns.